Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining this Tech at Lunch session. Today we will talk about AI safety and compliance, what's coming and how to prepare, which will be presented by Matthias Verbeke. During the session, you can ask your questions using the chat function, which we will address at the end of the session. Or at the end of the session, you can raise your hand and we will make sure you can use your mic to ask your questions. We are recording this session and we will make sure it gets to you within a few days. So for now, I would like to give the word to you, Matthias.
Okay, thank you very much, Miranda, and also from my side, welcome to this Tech at Lunch webinar on runtime assurance of AI systems in safety-critical industrial applications, in which I will introduce you to a number of key considerations on AI safety. Let me directly start by providing you with the key takeaways I want to convey today and on which I will elaborate during the next 25 minutes. First of all, we are facing an AI safety paradox, and we see that this is growing. We will also see that AI safety standards deliver a partial solution, but don't solve it completely. And then lastly, there is a clear technology gap that needs to be bridged in order to satisfy all AI safety requirements, but we're also catching up on this. Let me start by first detailing you the AI safety paradox. Today, I will mainly focus on AI safety assurance in the context of mechatronic systems, with which I mean systems that synergetically integrate both mechanical, electrical, as well as computer systems in order to create efficient, smart devices that perform specific tasks. And I think it won't come as a surprise that in order to make these systems more intelligent, AI is increasingly being used to complement these industrial systems with value-added functionality, being it, for example, perception, but also navigation or control functionality. Yet the downside is that the safety of these AI components, which are often black box approaches nowadays, is very hard to evaluate. And this is due to the dynamic environments in which these systems need to operate, the lack of interpretability of the underlying methods and their non-deterministic behavior, but also the fact that it is often hard to formally specify the environment or the functionality of the system, and that these systems need to operate under real-time constraints and are trained on incomplete or biased data sets. And this brings me to the observation of the AI safety paradox, which states that the more enhanced the functionality of the AI system becomes, the harder it is to ensure its safety. But at the same time, that this also implies that it becomes increasingly more important to take the necessary safety measures. And when considering safety assurance for mechatronic systems without an AI component, you typically need to guarantee the safety for the software, here denoted by this software boundary, and for the hardware, here denoted by the system boundary. And in this type of systems, the safety assurance is typically done using a model-based approach in which the impact of malfunctions is caused predominantly by random hardware failures or by software bugs. And this allows to provide an understanding of the failure modes of individual components that then propagate throughout the system. A software failure can then trigger a system failure, which potentially leads to a safety hazard. And this approach is very well covered by the IAC 61508 standard on functional safety of electrical, electronic, and programmable electronic safety-related systems. It is commonly referred to as the mother of functional safety standards, and it has various derived standards, as you can see in the figure on the right, amongst others in the building industry, in transportation, in energy and the medical domain, but also various instantiations for household appliances, for example, and industrial applications. Each of these standards is then complemented with well-developed, generally accepted, and also technically supported verification and validation practices and techniques, which exist both at the software level as well as at the hardware level, which is here exemplified by the verification and validation cycle, or, for example, the performance levels that define the required robustness of safety systems against dangerous failures. However, when you integrate AI or machine learning components into the system, this leads to additional sources of safety risk. And now the failures can also originate from this machine learning model itself, triggering further failures further down the line, which then possibly lead to new and unknown failure risks than what you would have if you only considered the software and the hardware in a previous iteration of the system. And here you see that while traditional safety engineering approaches offer standardized ways to specify and assess the safety risks for both the hardware and the software aspects of the system, they are not versatile enough to cope with a number of challenges that are introduced by the integration of AI and machine learning models. First of all, this includes the non-deterministic behavior that is typically encountered when considering AI-based systems. Second, it is typically not possible to incorporate all the known and unknown scenarios into the model training itself, which then leads to a number of limitations of the model. And then finally, it is possible that the machine learning model itself degrades over time due to a drift in the data set, which can, for example, be caused by a degradation of the sensor that is measuring the data of a particular component. And in addition, as you probably are aware, there is also the AI Act that is soon to be enforced, in which several risk classification levels will be adopted, as you can see depicted here. And an important category in the context of mechatronic systems are the high-risk AI-based systems, especially because about 90% of the AI Act requirements only affect high-risk systems, and particularly their providers. And an example of such a system includes a forklift in which the person detection and the person localization is performed by an AI model, on which I will elaborate a bit more later on. But in addition, you also see that the regulations that form the basis for the AI Act will also be incorporated into other regulations, of which the EU machinery regulation is the one of most importance for the context of this presentation. This brings me to the second aspect. So in non-AI-based systems, we saw that standards offered a decent framework for guiding companies towards compliance with these safety requirements. And in part, you see that this also holds for AI-based systems for which standardization efforts are ongoing and underway, but we are not there yet. So let me also briefly elaborate on this. Here you see an overview of the AI Act requirements for high-risk AI systems, and you see that these are quite encompassing, including, amongst others, the data governance, record-keeping, technical documentation, transparency, human oversight, and cybersecurity, next to aspects such as quality management, but also conformity assessment. And in what follows, I will mainly focus on risk management, but also the accuracy and the robustness, as these are the two aspects that have a lot of technical implications. And the safety aspects of an AI-based mechatronic system typically propagate through the full machine learning pipeline. A first important aspect is a precise specification of both the model and the data. And if we return to the example of the AI-enhanced forklift, this, amongst others, entails a clear description of the model requirements, such as the need for real-time results, for example, as well as the characteristics of the data that is to be expected. This then leads to the specification of the architectural design, both of the machine learning model itself, as well as regarding the integration into the system. And then once the model has been trained, it can be validated on an independent test set. Next to the exact prediction, it can also be interesting to assess the level of uncertainty of that prediction. For example, if the model only has a certainty of 85% that the person recognition is correct, it is probably better to revert to a fallback approach that is more accurate in order to perform this task. And then finally, you also want to be able to monitor the model over its lifetime once it has been deployed in order to make sure to capture a degradation in the results early on or adapt the model where needed. And for each of these aspects, the standardization efforts accommodate the requirements that are imposed by the AI Act, and this has been timely anticipated. So there you see that the Joint Technical Committee 21, or abbreviated JTC 21, is developing harmonized standards that play a vital role in the AI Act's enforcement, as the standards will also provide a legal presumption of conformity. The focus there is on the development of a body of homegrown European standards in support of the AI Act in order to address several of the requirements that I mentioned before. But what you see there is that in theory, the resulting harmonized standards directly allow to operationalize the legal requirements of the EU AI Act, providing a structured guidance for implementation as it should be. However, if you look at this point, there is still some work to be done, because in practice, still quite some ambiguities exist in the interpretation of these technical details that are described in the standards, which at this moment still cause confusion and will also lead to inconsistent implementation. However, one is actively working on that, and we see also evolutions on their way, hopefully in time for when the AI Act is becoming in place. And then a third and final aspect involves the technical implementation, where we still see that there is a gap between the imposed requirements and the technological building blocks that are already there to realize those in practice. And at Flanders Make, we are actively contributing to closing that gap, amongst others in the context of the ongoing strategic basic research project Safety, in which we study the required technological building blocks in order to guarantee safety across the machine learning model lifecycle that I discussed earlier. And let me briefly present to you a number of key aspects illustrated by a number of key first results that we have obtained over the first working year that has already been concluded. The first important focus is on safety specification, and here the goal is defining the purpose of the system as well as its associated safety risks. So this provides a means for constructing safety envelopes that allow to map the regions in the data space where the model is operating well, as you can also see visualized in the figure on the right. And this in turn then allows to minimize the uncertainty and derive the corresponding safety requirements. To this end, we are actively involved in the ongoing standardization efforts, also based on the industry feedback we receive and that we take along into these discussions. And this, in turn, allows us to create a number of technological artifacts that, amongst others, form the basis for selecting key attributes and architectures, which can then be specified through an in-house developed domain-specific language. This then in turn can be specified in a more formal representation, as you can see illustrated here. So that's the structured attribute-driven goal structuring notation for the derivation of AI requirements. And this then in turn serves as the basis for the architectural design for these machine learning-based systems, in which we position the machine learning building blocks, as well as the corresponding safety measures that need to be in place in the full architecture of the system. For example, by complementing it with an uncertainty supervisor or different monitoring strategies to which I will come back to in a moment. A second focus is then on uncertainty quantification, as I already mentioned before, very briefly, in which the aim is of measuring the uncertainty on the model output as the basis for, amongst others, specifying the safety bounds. And this then allows to identify possible sources of uncertainty and calculate how this uncertainty propagates throughout the full system in view of the machine learning pipeline, and allows to predict unsafe behavior and corresponding mitigation actions. Also there, we are actively performing work in the ongoing Safety SBO project. And there we are currently developing an uncertainty quantification benchmark, which allows to evaluate the ability to differentiate between different types of samples, samples that should be detected correctly, or samples of which there is still high uncertainty of being let through and imposing particular safety risks. There we see, based on our current results, that there is no single best solution, and that there are different techniques that perform well, but in which there is still room for improvement, and for which we are currently evaluating if we can combine these techniques into so-called ensembles in order to get the best of different worlds and to guarantee a higher safety assurance. The third aspect on which we are finally focusing is model monitoring. And here the aim is to monitor the machine learning model over time after it has been deployed into the system, with the aim to ensure safe operation over its lifetime. So the key goal here is to identify model degradation, for example, due to the distributional shift in the data, as I mentioned before, caused by different environments in which the system is operating, or due to a degradation in the sensors that are measuring the data that is coming into the system. The aim is then obviously to also rectify this model degradation, which can, for example, be done by retraining the model or by switching between different models that focus on different parts of the data space or on different tasks that need to be solved within the framework of the system. There we are working towards a model monitoring toolkit, which is called Model Guard, containing a large set of machine learning model monitoring techniques. that allows to ease the way in which they can be applied and also more easily assess the performance of these techniques based on the data and the model requirements. So this is a Python toolkit that is underway, which we target to industrial users by easing the way in which we implement each of these functions. So similar to other machine learning toolkits that are currently already available. And then finally, we want to bring everything together, which is being done through the so-called validity frames with the aim to enable traceability across this full machine learning model lifecycle, in which we take into account the specification of both the model and the data linked to formal standards or the requirements that are imposed by the AI Act. Also, the way in which the model is trained and validated is taken into account into a formal specification, as well as how the model is constructed and is interfacing with other parts of the system. This allows the complete traceability of this AI model, but also the corresponding data flow across the full life cycle and across the full architecture of the overall system, in which we will then also incorporate these runtime monitoring techniques in order to see when the model needs to be updated or retrained if we, for example, perceive particular drifts in the accuracy of the model, which might impose safety risks. So to conclude, I would like to reiterate on the key takeaways that I already mentioned at the start. So first of all, regarding the AI safety paradox, we see that this paradox is there and that it is growing because as the functionality of the AI systems enhance, they can act in ways that are harder to predict or to constrain. But this at the same time also means that additional attention is required for the safety aspects as such. With respect to standardization, I hope I shed some light on what is currently there. And there we see that the AI capabilities are rapidly advancing, often faster than is the case for safety standards. We also see that the safety requirements are highly intertwined. So there is an interaction between the software, the hardware, and the corresponding AI models. But consolidating standardization efforts are on their way with more detailed guidelines in the run-up to the enforcement of the AI Act and other derived regulations. And then finally, I also briefly introduced you to the technology gap. So currently there is a lack of technological building blocks to realize these AI safety features, but active research is going on to close this gap, amongst others, in the context of our strategic basic research project, Safety, within Flanders Make. And with this, I would like to thank you for your attention and for attending this webinar. If you would have any questions, you can put them in the chat and we're happy to answer them. And in case you would be interested to learn more on this, you're most welcome to get in touch. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Matthias, for this inspiring session. Let's see if there are any questions. I don't see any questions yet, which usually is a good sign. No questions. So that means that everything is quite clear. Great. Well, thank you again for attending this session. I can see a small question. Is this presentation available afterwards? Yes, it is. It will be sent to you after you have filled out the evaluation, Luc. So, and you will automatically receive this presentation. No more questions? No more questions. Okay, well then again, I would like to thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Matthias, again for your presentation, and I wish you all a very good day.
Have a nice rest of the day. Goodbye.
Bye.